Claire gave Victor an ultimatum. Obey her or get out of the house. Lucas nodded silently, betraying everything Victor had done for them. Victor packed his suitcase and left to carry out his plan. 3 days later, he had 111 missed calls. If you're enjoying this story, consider subscribing for more. Victor signed away his reputation across a polished conference table that Tuesday morning. By dinner, he'd learned exactly what it had bought him. The morning had started with coffee in his kitchen, custom cabinets he'd installed himself 10 years ago. At 63, Victor Flores had earned his reputation in Riverside's construction circles. 35 years of showing up early, staying late, delivering quality work. He'd spent the entire weekend preparing for this meeting. Claire, his daughter-in-law, needed this contract desperately. Her landscaping business was drowning. 6 months of barely breaking even, crew members leaving, equipment payments stacking up. Lucas had asked him directly. "Dad, we're drowning. If Claire doesn't get something big soon, we're going to lose everything. Can you help?" What kind of father says no to that? Richard Hayes studied the portfolio spread between them, his expression growing more skeptical with each page. The photos showed residential work, small yards, basic flower beds, nothing like the Gateway Commercial Plaza project he was developing. "Victor, I trust your judgment. We've worked together 15 years. But I have to be honest. This girl's portfolio is thin, really thin. These are quarter-acre residential jobs. Gateway is 3 acres of high-visibility commercial property." Richard leaned forward, his concern genuine. "I've got investors breathing down my neck. This landscaping is the final piece before we can start leasing retail space. $180,000 is a lot to stake on promise." "You absolutely sure about this?" This was the moment. Victor felt the weight of what he was about to put on the line. His entire reputation. 35 years of credibility. All of it riding on this single decision. Victor met his eyes, kept his voice steady and firm. "She's family, Richard. My daughter-in-law. I've known her 8 years, watched her build this business from nothing. What she lacks in big project experience, she makes up for in dedication." He paused, then delivered the promise that would haunt him. "I'm vouching for her personally. She won't let you down. And if there's any problem..." "Any problem at all? It falls on me. My reputation is your guarantee." Richard's pen tapped against the contract. The sound echoed in the silence. Tap, tap, tap. Each tap felt like a countdown. $180,000. The landscaping scope included native plant installations, state-of-the-art irrigation systems, decorative hardscaping for 3 acres. Claire had the equipment, barely, and a crew of 2 part-timers. Victor was betting his 35-year reputation on potential rather than proof, on family rather than qualifications. The pen stopped tapping. All right, Victor, for you. But I need her starting within 2 weeks. And I need weekly progress updates. Direct to me." Richard extended his hand. Victor shook it, relief flooding through him. "You won't regret this. I promise you, Richard. This won't go sideways." Famous last words. The drive home through Riverside's afternoon traffic gave him time to process what he'd done. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Every few minutes, doubt crept in. What if she couldn't handle it? What if he'd just destroyed his reputation for nothing? But then he'd picture Lucas's face when he'd asked for help. The desperation there. The shame of having to ask his father to bail him out. Victor had never wanted his son to feel that way. He rehearsed how he'd tell them. Keep it casual. Don't make it seem like he'd called in a major favor with one of the biggest developers in the region. Don't make them feel indebted. Just helping family. That's what family does. Victor pulled into the driveway around 6. His house. 3-bedroom ranch style he'd bought in 2003. Flower beds he'd planted, fence he'd stained, roof he'd replaced after that winter storm. 22 years of mortgage payments. Never late. Not once. He'd been so proud the day he made that final payment 3 years ago. Had taken Lucas out to dinner to celebrate. This is what financial discipline looks like. Son, this is security. Victor entered through the front door, juggling his briefcase and keys. Voices drifted from the living room. Claire's low tone, Lucas's lighter response. They didn't hear him come in. He paused in the hallway, setting his briefcase down quietly against the wall. He was about to call out, announce his presence, share the good news about the contract. Then Claire spoke, and Victor's world began to crack. So the old man finally did something useful. That Hayes contract is exactly what I needed to turn this business around. Victor froze. His hand, halfway to the living room doorway, stopped midair. The old man, not Victor, not your father, the old man. Lucas laughed softly, almost conspiratorially. Right? I've been asking him to help with connections for months. Guess he finally figured out he could still be useful for something. He still thinks he's this big important guy everyone respects. The words landed like physical blows, each one finding a space between his ribs he didn't know existed. Victor's hand found the doorframe, gripping it until his knuckles turned white. He's useful when we need him to be. That's about it. Though God, you should hear him in the mornings. In my day when I was building that, like we don't know he's just a retired contractor who got lucky with this house. Got lucky with this house. Victor had saved for 3 years for the down payment, had worked 60-hour weeks to make the mortgage, had sacrificed vacations, new cars, everything to build security for his family. Lucky. Lucas's voice came quieter, almost guilty, but not stopping. It is his house, Claire. It's our house. We live here. We pay bills. He just exists here, taking up space. Taking up space in his own home. The home he'd owned for 22 years before they'd even moved in. Victor stood in that hallway, hidden by the wall, listening to them dissect him. His breathing went shallow. The briefcase handle had left a red mark on his palm. His chest felt tight, compressed, like someone was standing on it. Lucas tried a weak defense. He does help out, Claire. He watches Lily. He cooks sometimes. He fixed the sink last month. Oh, wow. He fixed a sink. Give the man a medal. Lucas, wake up. We're 32 years old living with your dad. That contract? That's our ticket out of here. Once I build up the business with these bigger projects, we can get our own place, without him hovering around, making Lily call him Grandpa like he's this important figure in her life. That one pierced deeper than the rest. Lily, his granddaughter, the 3-year-old who ran to him every morning, who asked him to read her stories, who called him her best friend, like he's this important figure in her life, as if loving his granddaughter was somehow presumptuous. Victor didn't announce himself. Couldn't. His throat had closed up. His eyes burned. He walked quietly to his bedroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed he'd assembled himself 15 years ago. 22 years he'd owned this house, paid every mortgage statement on time, watched his son grow up here. And now, he was the old man who finally did something useful. The one taking up space. He'd put his entire reputation on the line that morning. For them, for family. And they thought he'd gotten lucky with this house. Dinner at 7 was torture masked as normalcy. Lily was already asleep, tucked into bed at 6:30. No buffer of a 3-year-old's chatter. No innocent questions to deflect the tension. Just 3 adults and the suffocating weight of what Victor had overheard. Claire had made pasta. Victor's favorite, ironically. He sat at the head of the table, the same seat he'd occupied for 22 years, and pushed food around his plate. Each bite tasted like cardboard. Claire and Lucas talked about the contract, about timelines, about ordering plants and scheduling the crew. They spoke around him, occasionally at him, but never really to him. Like he was furniture that occasionally required acknowledgement. Victor tried to find an opening, tried to find some way to reclaim his place in this family, in this house. Finally, he cleared his throat. I was thinking about adding built-in bookshelves in the living room. The contractor could start next month. I've been wanting to do it for years. Would really add value to the house. Claire's fork stopped midway to her mouth. She set it down with deliberate slowness. The clink of metal on ceramic echoed louder than it should have. That's our decision to make. You just live here. The silence that followed felt thick enough to choke on. Victor could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, a car passing outside, his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Our decision. You just live here, in his house. The house with his name on the deed. The house he'd paid for. The house he'd maintained and improved and loved for over 2 decades. Victor looked up, saw her watching him, arms crossed, expression cold and challenging, daring him to contradict her. This is my house, Claire. I've owned it for 22 years. My name is on the deed, mine alone. He kept his voice controlled, but something sharp had entered it. Something he'd been holding back for months of small comments, subtle dismissals, casual disrespect. Claire leaned back in her chair, somehow occupying more space than should be possible. Her body language screamed ownership, control, dominance. Listen to me or get out. The ultimatum hung between them, sharp and final as a blade. Get out of his own house, the house he'd sacrificed for, the house that represented every good decision he'd made in his adult life. Victor turned to Lucas, desperate now. His son, the boy he'd raised, the man he'd taught to stand up for what's right. Lucas, say something. This is my house. You know that. Lucas stared at his plate. His hands trembled slightly, gripping his fork like it was the only solid thing in the world. His jaw worked like he was trying to form words, but couldn't push them past his teeth. Victor watched his son wage an internal war, saw the conflict play out in the tightness around his eyes, the way his shoulders hunched forward. For a moment, Victor thought maybe, just maybe, Lucas would find the courage to speak up. Lucas looked up, met his father's eyes, and nodded. Slow, deliberate, agreement. That nod broke something in Victor that had remained intact through everything else, through Claire's contempt, through the overheard conversation, through the ultimatum. But his own son's betrayal? That shattered the last foundation he'd been standing on. Victor stood. The chair scraped against the floor, loud and harsh in the silence. He didn't throw anything, didn't raise his voice, didn't slam his fist on the table like he wanted to. He simply walked away with what dignity he could gather, each step measured and controlled. He walked to his bedroom, closed the door, and sat in the dark. Outside, through the wall, their voices resumed after a moment. Normal conversation, a laugh. Claire saying something about the project timeline. They'd moved on already, like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just driven a knife into the heart of their family. Victor sat on his bed and stared at the ceiling. The same ceiling he'd repainted 5 years ago. The same room where he'd slept for 22 years. Where he'd dreamed of retirement, of watching Lily grow up, of family dinners and holiday gatherings. All of it ash now. Morning light came, but Victor hadn't slept. He'd spent those dark hours making calculations, running scenarios, coming to terms with the unthinkable. He lay on top of the covers, still wearing yesterday's clothes, staring at ceiling textures he'd watched painters apply 15 years ago. Had paid them $700 to do that job. Had brought them lemonade while they worked. From the kitchen came the sounds of breakfast. Cabinet doors opening and closing, running water, Lily's voice asking about cartoons in that sweet, innocent way 3-year-olds have. Normal domestic rhythms that now belonged to strangers. Claire's voice carried down the hallway. "No, baby, not those cartoons. The educational ones. And finish your cereal first." Giving orders in his house about his granddaughter, while he lay invisible in his bedroom, already erased from their lives. By 9 a.m, Victor had his suitcase open on the bed. He packed methodically, almost mechanically, a week's worth of clothes, toiletries, his laptop, the folder of important documents he kept in the desk drawer, birth certificate, social security card, the house deed with his name on it. He left most of his belongings untouched. This wasn't surrender. This was strategic withdrawal, a tactical retreat before the counterattack. Footsteps in the hallway. Victor didn't look up, just kept folding a shirt with careful precision. Lucas stood in the doorway. Victor could feel his presence before he saw him. When he finally glanced over, his son's eyes were red and swollen. Tears ran down his cheeks in silent streams, but he didn't speak. Just watched his father pack, crying silently. Part of Victor wanted to stop, wanted to drop the suitcase and shake his son and demand to know when he'd become so spineless. When had Lucas transformed from the confident young man Victor had raised into this hollow version who couldn't stand up to his own wife? But Victor just kept packing, zipped the suitcase closed. The sound felt final, like a period at the end of a sentence. By 11 o'clock, he was ready. One suitcase. Everything he needed for what came next compressed into that single bag. He carried it down the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. These stairs he'd walked thousands of times. He'd built the handrail himself after Lucas was born, worried about safety. In the living room, Claire sprawled across the leather couch. Victor's couch. The one he'd saved 3 months to buy 8 years ago. Top grain leather, guaranteed for life. She had her feet propped on the coffee table, beer in hand despite the morning hour. Some daytime television show played on the TV he'd bought and mounted. She didn't acknowledge his presence. Didn't even glance over as he stood there with his suitcase. The dismissal was more effective than words. He was already gone to her, already erased. Lucas stood at the kitchen threshold, frozen between rooms, between loyalties. His hands gripped the doorframe until his knuckles went white. Tears still tracked down his face, but he remained silent. Complicit. "Grandpa!" Lily's voice cut through the tension like sunshine through storm clouds. She came running from the kitchen, barreling toward him with fearless 3-year-old energy, arms outstretched. Victor knelt, setting the suitcase down, caught her in a hug that threatened to crack what remained of his composure. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and maple syrup. Her small arms wrapped around his neck with complete, innocent trust. "Where you going, Grandpa? Are we going to the park?" Her small hands patted his cheeks, the gesture so familiar it hurt. "Grandpa has to go away for a little while, sweetheart." "But why? Did I do something bad?" The question stabbed him. "No, baby. No. You're perfect. Sometimes grown-ups need space. That's all." He kissed her forehead, breathed in the scent of her strawberry shampoo one last time, tried to memorize the weight of her in his arms. 3 years old. She wouldn't remember this clearly, wouldn't understand what had happened here. "I love you, Lily. Always remember Grandpa loves you." Victor stood, picked up his suitcase with hands that wanted to shake, but didn't. Walked past Claire without a word. Past Lucas, still frozen in the doorway. Opened his front door, the one he'd replaced 7 years ago with a solid oak door that cost $800. Walked out, closed it with a quiet click. Stood on the porch he'd built himself, stained himself, maintained for over 2 decades. The boards creaked under his weight, familiar and accusing. Behind him, through the door, he heard Lily start to cry. Downtown Riverside had furnished apartments on every 3rd corner, studios and 1-bedrooms advertising flexible terms and no questions asked. Victor chose a place called Riverview Apartments, though it didn't actually view the river. Just a parking lot and a strip mall. The landlord was a heavy-set man in his 50s with a clipboard and practiced indifference. $2,400 a month, first month, and deposit up front. Most folks want yearly leases, get a discount that way. "Month to month is perfect." "I won't be here long." The landlord shrugged, took his credit card, handed over keys. Didn't ask why a 63-year-old man was renting a furnished studio on month-to-month terms. That was Riverside for you. Everyone had their story. The studio was small, sterile, generic furniture that thousands of temporary residents had used before. A bed that wasn't his. A kitchen with 4 cabinets and a hot plate. A bathroom with fluorescent lighting that buzzed. Victor set his suitcase on the unfamiliar bed and sat beside it. The silence was absolute. No Lily's laughter, no television noise, no sound of Lucas moving through rooms, no life. Just Victor and his thoughts and the humming fluorescent lights. That first day blurred into evening. He unpacked mechanically, hanging clothes in a closet that smelled like industrial cleaner. Ordered food he couldn't eat. The delivery driver left it outside the door. Victor stared at the container for 20 minutes before throwing it away untouched. He lay on the bed that night, staring at a ceiling that wasn't his, in a room that meant nothing. His phone sat on the nightstand. Silent. No calls. No messages. They'd erased him so efficiently it was almost impressive. Day 2, Victor walked miles of Riverside streets, past the Hayes Development Office, past the Gateway Plaza construction site where Claire would soon be working on his recommendation, past coffee shops and parks and schools. Everything felt distant, like watching life through thick glass. People passed him without seeing him. He was just another older man walking aimlessly, invisible, taking up space. Day 3 morning, his phone finally buzzed. Victor grabbed it with embarrassing eagerness. A text from Lucas. Just 6 words. "Dad, I'm sorry. Just give us some time." Victor read it 3 times, then a 4th. "Give us some time. Not come home. Not, we made a mistake. Give us some time. Give you time. In my house." He said it aloud to the empty apartment. His voice sounded strange, unfamiliar. Victor set the phone down hard enough to crack the screen protector, grabbed his laptop from the desk, pulled up documents he'd organized years ago. House deed with his name alone, 22 years of mortgage statements, utility bills, property tax receipts, all bearing his name, his bank account, his signature. A thought crystallized with perfect, sharp clarity. Why did I leave my house? Why did he walk out when they told him to? What law said he had to obey an ultimatum in his own home? He'd spent 3 days feeling sorry for himself, feeling displaced and dismissed. 3 days of wandering and grieving. But beneath the hurt, beneath the betrayal, anger was beginning to burn. Clean and bright and clarifying. They'd counted on him being too polite, too passive, too concerned with family harmony to fight back. They'd counted on him just accepting this new reality they'd created. They'd miscalculated. The 4th night, Victor lay on the unfamiliar bedspread, staring at shadows from streetlights. But his mind wasn't wandering anymore. It was focused, sharp, planning. He pulled out his laptop again, searched. Real estate lawyer, Riverside, Oregon. Property rights, family disputes, unlawful occupation. One name kept appearing in the search results with consistently strong reviews. Margaret Reed, attorney at law. Specializing in property rights and family real estate conflicts. 40 years of experience. Office in Northwest Riverside. Victor sent an email at 2 a.m. By 8, she'd responded. Available that afternoon at 2. He arrived at her office at 1:45, unable to wait. A brick building downtown with ivy growing up one side. Professional, but not corporate. The waiting room had comfortable chairs and paintings of Oregon landscapes. At exactly 2, the door opened. "Mr. Flores?" Margaret Reed was early 60s, silver hair in a neat bun, navy suit. Her handshake was firm, her eyes direct and assessing. She led him to an office lined with law books and case files. "Tell me what's going on." Victor had planned to be concise, professional, hit the main points and let her ask questions. But when he opened his mouth, everything poured out. 20 minutes of uninterrupted explanation, the contract favor, the overheard conversation, Claire's contempt, the dinner ultimatum, Lucas's nod, walking out with one suitcase. 3 days in a sterile apartment while they lived in his house. Margaret listened without interrupting, took notes occasionally. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment, reviewing what she'd written. "Let me make sure I understand the key facts. You own the house outright, mortgage fully paid, only your name on the deed. You never added anyone else to the title. Is that correct?" "Correct. I bought it in 2003, made the last payment in 2022. Never added Lucas or Claire." "And they've been living there how long?" 3 years. Lucas had financial trouble, lost his job. I invited them to move in temporarily while he got back on his feet." "Do they pay rent?" "Have you formalized any kind of lease agreement or rental arrangement?" "No, no rent. They contribute to groceries sometimes, utilities occasionally. But no formal arrangement. They're family. It was supposed to be temporary." Margaret nodded, leaned back in her chair. Mr. Flores, you have very strong legal standing here. The property is yours. They're essentially guests who've overstayed. Without a lease or rental agreement, without any ownership stake, they have limited legal protections. She paused, her expression becoming more serious. But I need to ask you directly. Are you absolutely certain you want to pursue this? This is your son, your granddaughter. Legal action, especially eviction proceedings, will damage those relationships, possibly permanently. Family law cases like this rarely end well for anyone involved. Victor didn't hesitate. The answer had been forming over 3 days of isolation and reflection. I want my house back. They made their choice. They told me to get out of my own home. My son nodded in agreement when his wife said to obey her or leave. They've shown me exactly how much I matter to them. Now I'm showing them the consequences. Margaret studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good. Certainty matters in these cases. Judges can sense ambivalence from across the courtroom. They need to see that you're resolute, that this isn't just an emotional reaction you'll regret. She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'll draft a formal notice requiring them to vacate the property. 30 days is standard in Oregon for month-to-month tenancies, though technically they don't even have that status. Still, we'll give them 30 days to appear reasonable. Second, we'll file for unlawful detainer if they refuse to leave after the notice period. That's the legal term for what most people call eviction. Given that you own the property outright and they have no lease, no rental agreement, and no ownership stake, this should be straightforward. Third, and this is important, Mr. Flores, you cannot go back to that house during this process. Not to get belongings, not to check on things, not even to see your granddaughter. Any contact could be construed as harassment or could complicate the legal proceedings. Can you commit to that? The granddaughter part hit hard. Not seeing Lily for 30 days, maybe longer. But Victor had already made his choice. I can commit to that. Excellent. I'll have the notice prepared by tomorrow morning. We'll send it via certified mail and have it hand-delivered by a process server. No room for them to claim they didn't receive it. She looked up from her notes, expression softening slightly. Mr. Flores, I've handled cases like this before. I won't lie to you. It's going to be painful. They'll be angry. They'll say things designed to hurt you, to make you back down. Your son will probably try to guilt you about Lily. Are you prepared for that? They already said the worst things. I heard them when they didn't know I was listening. Whatever they say to my face can't be worse than what they said behind my back. Margaret nodded, something like respect in her eyes. Then let's get your house back. The notice arrived at Victor's house on day 6. He knew because Margaret called him at 9:15 in the morning. Process server confirmed delivery. Your son answered the door. Signed for it. The 30-day clock starts today. Victor sat in his studio apartment, phone pressed to his ear, imagining Lucas's face when he opened that envelope. The legal letterhead, the formal language, notice to vacate, 30 days, legal action will be pursued. His phone started ringing 20 minutes later. Lucas. Victor let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. By noon, he had 15 missed calls. The voicemails started coming. Victor listened to the first one. Dad, what the hell is this? A notice to vacate? You're seriously doing this? Call me back. We need to talk about this like adults. Like adults. Victor almost laughed. Adults who tell their father to get out of his own house. Adults who mock him behind his back. Those kinds of adults. He deleted the voicemail. Deleted the next 5 without listening. Margaret had been clear. No contact. Let the legal process work. By day 7, he had 43 missed calls. Text messages flooded in. Some from Lucas, some from Claire. The tone evolved over the course of the day. Lucas at 8 a.m. Dad, please call me. Let's talk about this. Lucas at noon. This is insane. You're going to throw out your own son and granddaughter? Lucas at 4 p.m. Lily keeps asking where you are. You're breaking her heart. That one stung, but Victor remembered Margaret's warning. They'll use Lily to manipulate you. Don't let them. Claire at 6 p.m. You're pathetic. This is why everyone talks about you behind your back. Old man throwing a tantrum. There it was, the mask slipping, the contempt showing through. Victor turned his phone to silent and focused on what came next. Margaret had explained the timeline. 30 days for them to vacate voluntarily. If they refused, which she expected, they'd file for unlawful detainer. Court hearing within 2 weeks typically. Judgment. Sheriff enforced eviction if necessary. 6 to 8 weeks total, she estimated. 6 to 8 weeks until he could go home. He could wait 6 to 8 weeks. Days 8 through 15 blurred together. Victor established a routine in his studio apartment. Morning walks through Riverside. Coffee at a shop he'd never been to before. Lunch at diners where nobody knew him. Afternoons reading or watching the news. Evenings alone with his thoughts. His phone continued to blow up. By day 10, he had 96 missed calls. The voicemails became increasingly desperate, then angry, then threatening. You're making a huge mistake. We'll fight this. You can't just throw people out on the street. Claire's lawyer says you don't have a case. We've established residency. You can't evict us. Victor forwarded that voicemail to Margaret. She called him back within an hour. They hired a lawyer. Good. Means they're taking this seriously. But residency doesn't matter when they have no lease and no ownership interest. Their attorney is blowing smoke, trying to scare you off. Don't engage. Stay the course. On day 12, Lucas showed up at Riverview Apartments. Victor was returning from his morning walk when he saw his son's car in the parking lot. Lucas sat on the hood, waiting. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled. Victor stopped 20 feet away. Every instinct screamed to go to him, to talk, to fix this. But he remembered Margaret's words. No contact. Dad, please, 5 minutes, just talk to me. Victor shook his head, kept walking toward the building entrance. Dad, what do you want from us? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. Claire's sorry. We were wrong. Just stop this legal action. Victor paused at the door, hand on the handle, turned back. You told me to get out of my house. You nodded when Claire gave me an ultimatum. You've shown me exactly where I stand. This isn't about an apology, Lucas. This is about consequences. He went inside before Lucas could respond. Watched from his window as his son sat on the car hood for another 20 minutes before driving away. That night, Victor's resolve wavered for the first time. He sat in the dark, phone in hand, Lucas's number on the screen. One call, one conversation. Maybe they could work this out. Then he remembered. The old man finally did something useful. He still thinks he's important. Taking up space. He put the phone down. Day 16 brought a new development. Victor received a call from Richard Hayes, the developer. the man who'd given Claire the contract on Victor's recommendation. "Victor, we need to talk. About the Gateway project. About Claire." Victor's stomach dropped. He'd been so focused on the house situation, he'd almost forgotten about the contract that had started everything. "What's going on, Richard?" "She's 2 weeks behind schedule already. Half the plants she ordered were wrong species. Her crew isn't showing up consistently. I've got investors asking questions, Victor. You vouched for her. Your reputation is on this." There it was, the other shoe dropping. Claire wasn't just taking his house. She was destroying his professional reputation in the process. "What do you need from me?" "Honestly, I need you to fix this. Talk to her. Get her back on track. Or I'm going to have to terminate the contract and find someone else." Which puts me even further behind and costs me money. "Richard, I can't. We're in the middle of a legal situation. I'm not in contact with her right now." Silence on the other end, then a heavy sigh. "Legal situation. Great. Victor, I trusted you on this. Gave her a shot because of our relationship. I need this project done right." "I understand. Do what you need to do." After the call ended, Victor sat staring at his phone. 35 years of reputation. Built carefully, maintained meticulously, and Claire was demolishing it in 2 weeks. But there was nothing he could do. Getting involved would violate the legal process, would give them ammunition. He had to let it play out, even if it meant watching his professional legacy crumble. Day 30 arrived with gray skies and rain, Oregon weather matching the mood. Victor woke early, phone already buzzing with a call from Margaret. "Today's the deadline. They have until midnight to vacate voluntarily. My office will do a drive-by at 5 p.m. to check if they've moved out. If they're still there, we file the unlawful detainer paperwork tomorrow morning." "They won't leave. You know that." "No, I don't expect they will, which means we go to court. I'll file first thing tomorrow. We should get a hearing date within 2 weeks. Be prepared, Mr. Flores. Court isn't pleasant, especially in family situations." Victor spent that day watching the clock. Every hour felt like 3. At 5 p.m., his phone buzzed. Margaret again. "They're still there. Cars in the driveway, lights on inside. My assistant confirmed. We're filing tomorrow as planned." At 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before midnight, Victor's phone rang one more time. "Lucas. Call number 111 over the past 30 days. Victor stared at the screen, watching it ring, watching the clock tick over to midnight, watching the call go to voicemail. 111 missed calls. 111 times his son had tried to reach him. 111 attempts to undo what they'd done. Not one of them would change his mind. The court hearing was scheduled for day 43, 2 weeks after the formal filing. Riverside County Courthouse, Family Division, Judge Patricia Chen presiding. Margaret met Victor outside the courthouse at 8:30 a.m. She wore a different suit, charcoal gray this time, and carried a briefcase thick with documents. "Remember what we discussed. Answer questions directly. Don't get emotional. Don't engage with anything they say. Let me handle the legal arguments. You're just there to confirm facts." They entered the courthouse through security. The hallway outside the courtroom was full of people waiting for various hearings. Victor scanned the crowd and found them. Lucas and Claire, sitting on a bench with their attorney. A woman in her 40s with red hair and an expensive-looking suit. Claire looked defiant, arms crossed, chin up. Lucas looked miserable, slouched forward, staring at the floor. When he saw Victor, his eyes filled with tears again. But he didn't stand, didn't approach, just looked away. All parties in Flores versus Flores and Martins, please enter the courtroom. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur of the hallway. Victor followed Margaret inside. The courtroom was smaller than he expected. Wood paneling, state seal on the wall, judge's bench elevated. Everything designed to impress the weight of the law. Judge Chen entered. Mid-50s, Asian American, reading glasses perched on her nose. She settled into her chair and reviewed the file in front of her. "Good morning. I've reviewed the filings. Mr. Flores, represented by Ms. Reed, is seeking to evict his son, Lucas Flores, and daughter-in-law, Claire Martins, from property located at 1427 Oakwood Drive. Property owner is Victor Flores, sole owner, no other parties on the deed. Defendants have resided there for approximately 3 years with no formal lease or rental agreement. Is that accurate?" "That's correct, Your Honor." Margaret stood as she spoke, professional and precise. "And the defense?" Claire's attorney stood. Her voice was sharp, accusatory. "Your Honor, while the facts as stated are technically accurate, they don't reflect the full context. My clients were invited to live at the property by Mr. Flores. They've resided there for 3 years, contributing to household expenses, maintaining the property, raising their child there. They've established this as their family home. Established residency doesn't create ownership or legal right to remain against the owner's wishes, unless there's a lease agreement or some other legal basis. No formal lease, Your Honor, but there was an implied agreement of continued residency based on Mr. Flores's invitation and their 3-year occupancy." Judge Chen removed her glasses, looked directly at the defense attorney. "Counselor, implied agreements don't supersede property ownership. If Mr. Flores wants his property back and the occupants have no lease, no ownership stake, and no rental agreement, this is fairly straightforward. Do you have any evidence of a formal or legal arrangement that would prevent eviction?" "Your Honor, we'd like to present testimony about the circumstances that led to this action, about family conflict and possible elder abuse." Victor's head snapped up. Elder abuse? Margaret had warned him they might try something like this, but hearing it still shocked him. "Elder abuse? That's a serious allegation. Do you have evidence?" "We believe Mr. Flores is being influenced by outside parties who,